Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm going to be showing off some deck lists from GLC format and looking at the format because I haven't really explored it too much and looked at the series deck list in quite a while, so I want to see how much it's changed. Specifically, I'm looking at how much it's changed in the past year or so. So pretty much looking at what new additions are coming to the decks from the sets of the past year, which would be the sets with the V-Stars, so Astral Radiance on, and I want to see like how the new decks are evolving, because obviously in a good format you want the decks to evolve over time, because if the one format stays the same for long periods of time, it gets very stale. And so one way, and I plan on doing another video where I analyze GLC more, but this is going to be one that I'm just going to talk about the decks and looking at them, because as I said, I haven't looked at them in quite a while in serious detail. So looking at this first one here, this is a pretty standard water deck list. I have a few lists for each type. Some types only have one, some have more. This is pretty standard stuff though. It's just like a water energy acceleration style list. You see the Blastoise and the Frostmoth, allowing you to accelerate lots of energy to stuff like Wailord, Lapras, Wishy-Washy, and then you have the Italian engine for a lot of power and consistency. And then one of the new additions here is Arizu, as well as Irida, which is here. And so those are some nice additions. Arizu sees a lot of play in this format, and it's a very strong addition. This was Gloria, although Gloria is essentially the same thing as Bridget, so that's not really a new card. But there's not too many changes for the fact that it's been like a year. There aren't really many changes, which is a bit unfortunate, but overall the deck it's pretty solid, and it's been one of the top decks essentially the whole time, which is a bit boring, of course, with the top deck being the same for like 2 years, but still it's a solid list. And this one here is a bit more different, a bit newer, a bit more interesting. We see some new cards. We see the Hisuian Basculegion, which I'll showcase here, allowing you to shuffle all the energy from your discard pile back into your deck. There's 20 per energy, and this is free. It's a relatively new card as well. It's actually much newer than I thought, Lost Origin. I thought it was a little bit older than that. But that's very powerful as well. The Hisuian Basculin, which the other list played as well, a very powerful set of Pokemon. And people are favoring this over Alolan Vulpix, which is interesting because it allows you to have a more simple setup. Pairs nicely with the Sabla as well. Either of those are very good early options. And then we actually see the Rapid Strike package. Or some of the Rapid Strike attackers, notably this Lapras instead of the other, this Starmie, and then this Wishy-Washy, all three very solid attackers. You still have the Blastoise Frostmoth to accelerate the energy. But then this time we have these other attackers allowing for more spread attacks, notably Starmie, Lapras, Empoleon, and Greninja all have spread, as well as Inteleon, which has spread. And this is really interesting because now you have some other options here. Notably, Wishy-Washy gets really big with lots of energy. That's not a new card, though. But then we do see the new Empoleon, which can be played straight onto your bench if you have no cards in hand from the discard pile. You play it from the discard pile. So you have cards to combo with that in this list, notably Ball Guy, which normally sees play. Peony, though, a bit more interesting. Irida, which is a staple of this list. And then we also see just a lot of consistency cards. Then we see this Greninja here, really interesting. Immune on a coin flip, a bit of an annoying card that debatably should be banned, but also providing some spread value here. And this can be paired with Archie's Ace in a Hole. So this is really unique here that says you can only play if it's the last card in your hand. And then you just put a water Pokemon from your discard pile straight onto your bench. Also, sorry if there's any flickering. But yeah, you can plop that Greninja straight onto the bench. That's the only way, I believe, to get it into play. Yeah, that looks like the only way. But that's still reasonably consistent when you have access to cards like Versus Secret Battle Compressor, as well as stuff like, most importantly, the Inteleon engine, to be able to get that reasonably consistently. And then that's very solid, allowing you to get this attacker into play as well as other attackers. It's just a nice addition to the deck. A bit of a different feel here, though. So this is a bit more unique, but still the same like Blastoise style build. In the second most popular deck, I'm going in order of decks or types by popularity, but Water's still atop. Psychic number 2, which is it's been that way for quite a while. This list here is pretty generic. I don't remember, do we have multiple Psychic lists? Yeah, we have a few Psychic lists here, but still similar ideas. This one, I guess, is the general Psychic list. Psychic spread with some strong attackers as well. We don't see the Giratina on this list or Energy Acceleration, but we do see But we see a little bit. We see Counter Energy and Dimension Valley for a little bit of acceleration, as well as Raihan. But most notably, we see here that we have some nice spread options. Lunala here is just insane, allowing you to double the damage counters on all your opponent's Pokemon and do 130 plus 30 for Psychic Colorless, which is easily payable with the way this list is set up, as well as this Mismagius, which is just insane. It's debatably the best addition to the whole. Well, it's not the best addition to the whole format, but it's one of the best. Here saying if it has full HP and is KO'd, you put 8 damage counters on the defending Pokemon, which is just amazing. And then also for one Psychic on the stage 1, you do 2 damage counters on all your opponent's Pokemon. Super devastating, a ton of spread, and works very well with the other spread options. Notably, you have Dusknoir to move damage counters around, Blacephalon to allow you to place tons of damage counters, especially on that, I believe, 3 prize turn. And then we see Spectrier, which is a new card. It says choose 2 your opponent's Pokemon, put 2 damage counters on each of them. Very solid. And then 120 for 3, not bad either. And you can't use that attack next turn. Now we see the Gourgeist as well, a very solid attacking option. Notably, it has the same attack as Mismagius, a similar idea. And then we see the Kirlia. This is probably the biggest addition to the format, which it's just a discard 1, draw 2 on a stage 1 that evolves into a very powerful stage 2. We have the Scalade seeing play as well, a relatively new card, allowing you to search for a supporter every turn, an amazing effect that just super good even in standard format. We see Psychic type is the list that's changed the most, and actually the other Psychic list is completely new, all those ideas. And then we see everything else here looks pretty normal. As I said, Gloria, another copy of Bridget, essentially for added consistency. This list choosing to play both, but nothing crazy new here. But some new ideas that make this deck even stronger. But then this list is completely new. So notably, we have a few weird Pokemon, but pretty much what you have here is it's a Lost Zone deck. So you do have solid and interesting basic options. We have Marshadow, which also saw play in the other list, as well as Mew, Mewtwo, Mew and Mewtwo, which are all just very solid. And then we also see a lot of new cards from the Lost Origin set. Notably, we see Bayonet putting itself in the Lost Zone, but allowing you to recover a supporter. Comfy, allowing you to have an additional draw engine and Lost Zone some cards. Of course, the Lost Zone here is very risky because you can't recover those cards and you're only playing 1 copy. We see Lost Vacuum, Lost Blender, as well as what else do we have to Lost Zone? You have Close Experiment, and then Bayonet and Comfy. You need Comfy to activate the Lost Zone cards, and the deck does not play Mirage Gate to get the benefit of that. However, if you get 10 cards in the Lost Zone, you can do Stabilize, insanely good attack, Lost Mine, placing 12 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon any way you like for 1 Psychic. So this is a very similar idea to the other list where you want to power up Blacephalon. This is a bit more awkward to do, but higher payoff, arguably. And then you also see just the whole list built around that, as well as Gengar here, interestingly, a new card, which says you can play a Strand to the bench from the discard and the damage to it, which isn't that bad. And then you also do 2 damage counters on each your opponent's active for each of their benched. So that's just a very solid attacker and a solid attacking option. Meowstic also being able to get supporters. So a very supporter-focused deck. We see a lot of copies of Hexamaniac in this list, as well as a lot of copies of Guzma. You can reuse Colossal Experiment. And this allows you to get more cards in the Lost Zone, as well as just disrupt your opponent a lot. Hexamaniac, I believe, was played in the other list. Actually, it was not played in this list. Hexamaniac, Psychic usually plays Hexamaniac, though, especially these, bare bones style decks, especially with this Chimecho here that says your opponent can't play any Pokemon that have an ability from their hand during their next turn. So solid amounts of disruption in combination with this ability to loop supporters. Interestingly, we don't see something like Lusamine or Caitlyn Cynthia to recover supporters, but that's just the deck builder's choice. I think that could provide a lot of value, and I'm sure this person would consider it as well. But overall, very solid, very consistent. Not super consistent, but for Lost Zone, it's surprisingly consistent. Moving on to Dark, the third type. And realistically, most of the types are very viable. There's one type that's not viable, which I'm sure you know. But this Dark list here, this is, I think there are this is the only Dark list. So this hasn't changed at all, pretty much. Other than, I guess, the Liepard, which is a discard 1, draw 2, which is relatively new, I guess. It's not amazingly good, but it's not bad either. It's the only draw engine, which is a bit of an issue. but the rest of the dark types stacked. We got Glare and Wheezing. We have Weavile, which are both Weavile's big damage here, and Punishing. Glare and Wheezing is a card that slows down the pace of the game, and also just poisons. It's a very good attacker. Zoroark, a very good attacker, allowing you to pivot very nicely and punish plays. Glare and Moltres, a big attacker. Spiritomb, a big attacker. Hoopa, a big attacker. And then Guzzlord here, really interesting, very powerful, notably because of its attack of Red Banquet, 120 for Dark, Colorless, and then you take an extra prize if you grab a KO, which is amazingly powerful. We see stuff like Dark Claw, able to take advantage of that, allowing you to hopefully get one-shots with Guzzlord a lot of the time. No Glare and Zigzagoon, which I think could be strong in this list, but they choose not to play it for a more streamlined build. And then you just see a lot of swishing options. The good old Gloria coming in here again, as well as the Bridget. Nothing really new in this list. I'm trying to look if there's anything new, but essentially nothing other than, I guess, that Gloria. And then the Light Pride also providing value. But overall, the list is very strong. If you want to play Dark type, it's a bit of a boring type, I'd say. All the attacking options are pretty solid, but your routes are pretty straightforward in this list. But it's still very strong and a lot of very good attackers. Dark type probably has the best attackers, but then the engine is quite a bit weaker. Now we're looking at colorless. We have, I think, 2 colorless lists. But starting off with the standard colorless control. I don't think this plays any new cards other than that Gloria, of course. But it's pretty solid still. You have, I'm like somewhat familiar with this list. It's certainly a common list, but notably you have Stoutland to kind of lock your opponent up. Will the Lillipups hurt your Stoutland to lock your opponent up? I'm assuming they have your Memory Energy and no Memory Capsule, interestingly enough, but able to access your prize cards pretty well with the Gladion, which is this is Gladion's the first supporter as well as the Peonia here. So good access to prize cards, and we also see Hisuian Heavy Ball also is making a lot of appearances in GLC lists, but not this one, which is another new card. I think I don't know how new that card is, but it's seeing a lot of play in GLC because it naturally allows prize fixing, which is very useful. But then this list you also have Persian to punish your opponents, and then Colorless has one of the stronger engines with Cinccino and Pidgeotto, as well as Delcatty, a solid control card, and Bunnelby allowing you to loop certain combos as well as punish your opponent by milling them if they get stuck in any way, and Munchlax and Snorlax are very solid engine cards as well. It's pretty much all an engine except for Persian and Stoutland, those lines, but still very, very strong. You're going to lock up your opponent. You also have Pokédoll, Robo Substitute, and there's tons of ways of punishing your opponent for making any small misplays. It's a very difficult deck to play against, and it obviously is very unfun if they lock you up. But trying not to get locked up is a bit of an interesting puzzle. This deck has not changed much though since I last played it, or since I last played a bunch around like a year ago. So, but comment down below if you want to see me. I've got an idea. If I do like a tournament with like 8 people, one with each type, or it could be 11 people or 10 people or whatever, depending how many types you want in the tournament. But then just a bracket style tournament, which seems like an interesting idea with various YouTubers, seeing if they want to be in it. And comment down below if you want to be in a tournament like that, because I think it could be really interesting. A bit of like a low-key thing, not a very competitive thing, but just a fun thing. Seeing what people can create, and also just showcasing GLC, because it has been, as you can see, the forum's a bit stale, hasn't changed too much, but bringing that back a little seems like an interesting idea. Also, back to this list, I guess, Misfortune Sister is a very powerful card, allowing you to mill items. It's a bit random, but still pretty solid in this list. Decks play, it varies how many Switch they play, but like it's still a good card. A lot of lists play Tantalize and Birdkeeper, though, so it loses a little bit of value there. And this list plays Skypillar. It does not play Galar Mine, a bit of an interesting decision. Nothing crazy here, though. Pretty basic. Silene as well, another recovery card. A new card, making its way into lists. We don't see Team Yellshire, interestingly enough. We just see Lusamine, Cynthia, and Caitlyn, as well as Delcatty, Herdier, allowing you to recover cards. Munchlax as well. There are a lot of recovery options in this list. But yeah, still pretty solid list. It hasn't changed too much. We just do Rescue Carrier as well. I don't know how new that is, though. And then this other list, colorless list, I was considering putting a third colorless list here, but you have either Porygon Z or you have Archeops, allowing you to power up a lot of colorless attackers. This list also playing the Slacking with Lazy, a very, very solid attacker. And then it just like a very solid deck. Interestingly, I'm not sure why we see this Porygon 2. I don't know what value that provides. Maybe it's just the best like HP attack cost or HP retreat cost style card. Also, I forgot about Barrel, a very solid colorless engine as well, and a relatively new one, which is really interesting having so many colorless draw engines. They don't need to play the draw Snorlax, they just play the unfazed fat Snorlax, another new attacker. Very solid, as well as Ditto to copy any of these Pokemon. There's just a bunch of basics generally, as well as the Slacking, providing some strong value. And then you accelerate using either that Porygon Z, allowing you to accelerate special energy from hand, or that that Archeops, allowing you to accelerate special energy from deck. And so this is a pretty interesting deck. Nothing crazy here, but just a very solid energy acceleration deck with a bit of some interesting options with the special energy addition to it. But nothing crazy here, and not too many new additions. Still functions relatively the same, unless you're playing that Archeops line, in which case it functions differently. You can also throw an Aerodactyl, that's a natural inclusion in that list. And then this list here, we're going to grass, and we actually have two grass lists. Surprisingly, this is the first one we're looking at here is the solid grass list, though, with just the Venusaur and then the Rillaboom, allowing you to accelerate tons of grass energy. We also see the new-ish Grottle and Torterra, which provide... Torterra is an insanely good attacker. Grottle is a solid search Pokemon as well. Roserade, which is another search setup card, provides solid value. And then a few attackers here. Not actually many attackers, because you can attack, of course, Torterra, amazingly good attacker, but then Venusaur, Rillaboom, not horrible by any means. But then we see Kricketune, allowing you to buff up the HP of your attackers even more, pretty crazy. And then we see Shining Genesect and Zarude, just two very solid grass attackers. And then we also just see everything else here is pretty generic. We do see Catexwell. I'm not sure. That's just like a tech card. I don't know why I'm pointing that out, but it stood out to me a little bit. Nothing crazy here, though. Of course, having access to Netball, Revitalizer, and then, of course, that insanely strong Roserade, Rillaboom, Venusaur combo with Grottle as well, allowing you to have amazing consistency. This deck's just very good. People said it was the best deck, and it's clearly not the best deck. It's pretty straightforward, but very strong, and barely plays any attackers either, but it's a very good list. And you have access to Hexamaniac. This is the list that usually plays Hexamaniac as well, allowing you to shut down your opponent's abilities for a turn, which is very nice. And yeah, pretty much everything else is pretty standard. And then this is the more interesting grass list, the what I describe as the first good attacker style deck on this list. We just have a bunch of good attackers, and you put them all in one deck. There are quite a few like this. We still see the Roserade. But then we see the Jumpluff, which can attack twice for 60. Pretty solid. You can buff that up, I believe, with Muscle Band. And, okay, I was looking, some lists play, I think it's a... I don't know. There's some other Pokemon that like buffs them up. I don't remember the name of the Pokemon though, so that's unfortunate. But pretty much you do Jumpluff, hit them a bunch. Vespiquen, hit them for a bunch of damage. Torterra again, still making its way into this list, as well as Kricketune, Kartana, Yanmega, Beedrill, also all attackers. Beedrill you can play straight from your hand if you have no cards in hand. We also see Green's really interesting in this list because there aren't too many abilities in this list. There still are some, but less. And then we also see this list actually playing Featherball, a really interesting inclusion, allowing you to search for that Yanmega line, that Kartana, that Beedrill, and that whole Jumpluff line as well. So really interesting there. We see Wishful Baton, a bit of an interesting card, and then the Lost City, which is very, very good in GLC, allowing you to completely shut down opponent's attacking option because it's gone to the Lost Zone. So if they want to stream an attacker, the main one was probably Amazing Rare Kyogre, which is fallen out of fashion, but you just shut them down with the Lost City, so that's very solid. And list still plays Turffield, though. But a bit of an interesting list. You can substitute the attacks in this list for whatever you want. This one choosing to play that Featherball engine style. It's hard to call it an engine, but a solid value with 8 Apricot Maker as well as greens, allowing you to set up quite nicely here. And it's just an interesting list. Nothing crazy about it, but just good. And Jumpluff provides amazing value as well. This is another... actually, no, this is not the good attacker stylist. This is and I'm looking at this list. I didn't actually look at this list a ton before. This list is a fighting list, of course, and it actually is a, what is happening? This, like, the attackers are all spread out. It's very strange. This is a Colossal list, though. So you set up Colossal, and then you go ahead and accelerate fire and fighting energy. That's your main condition. And this is actually much more of an interesting list than I originally realized. It's a Maxie's Hidden Ball trick. This is essentially the same thing as Archie's in the Hole, except it's fighting type. And so your goal is to get up, presumably, this Colossal. You can get that up with a Rare Candy as well. And then you have stuff like Glade and some other options to get out of the just Glade to get out. Sorry, Gladion to get out of the prize cards. You can also set up Glade with Max's Hidden Ball trick. So that's very strong. Glade's just a very good card as well, and you can use that Max's multiple times with Versus Seeker. You have Order Pad, X Transceiver, which is an interesting card. I have not actually played with that card ever. Judge Whistle, Chromatic Trainer's Mail, Trekking Shoes. I'm assuming Acro Bikes in this list. Bicycle, yeah. We just see all these, like, very strong item consistency cards. They're not very strong, but solid item consistency cards allowing you to set up Maxis as well as Grant. A very solid card. The other list probably played... This is not fighting. Grant's a very good card. And then you set up Colossal, allowing you to accelerate energy. One of the best attacking lines, though, here is the Machamp, which sees play in every list because the Machoke provides bench barrier, a very strong bench barrier. And then we also see the new Terrakion, a walling Pokemon. Sudowoodo, that's not Sudowoodo. I clicked on the wrong thing. Sudowoodo, allowing you to copy one of your opponent's attacks. Stack Attack, a very big Pokemon. And then... Hisuian Arcanine, very strong with the Colossal. And all these, and then there's this Regirock as well, allowing you just to set up these amazingly powerful turns in the late game. This is quite a bit of a setup deck, though. So if you don't set up, it just falls flat, but it's interesting. And Grant allowing you to recover from the discard cards from your hand, thin your hand. Very good. And overall, this list is just pretty solid, pretty fun. Weird, and a bit high roll. I imagine it's like kind of funny to play, but also you either get set up or you don't, and that determines whether you win or not. But overall, it's a solid list. We even see like Custom Catcher, which is a horrible card in this format, but just a very simple straight draw card here as well. And then a lot of stadiums, just trying to get your hand right and just getting all the stuff set up right. And you can take a few turns to set up. It's not a huge deal, especially with the big payoff of Machamp. Stack Attack, Terrakion, all very good attackers, as well as the rest are pretty good as well. And then we have a few more fighting lists. Yeah, we have 2 more fighting lists. This is the, I guess, good cards fighting list. We see Excadrill and Donphan, allowing you just to hit for big damage, as well as Terrakion. This is a bit awkward to set up. You do need Raihan to set this up, I gotta assume. And you also have Buzzwole here, a very good attacker. Passimian, a good attacker. Then Steelix, capitalizing on that bench damage, and it's not a bad attacker anyways. So, yeah, that's pretty much all there is to this list. Very simple. We see some healing options. We see Hexamaniac because there are no abilities. We see Green's Exploration because there are no abilities. And this list is just very, very strong. Very straightforward. Pot Helmet to reduce damage. Fighting Fury Belt to have more HP, do more damage. Muscle Belt. Martial Arts Dojo, we see the Lost City again coming in here because you just want to hit. You don't need too many crazy things here. And just the whole tag call engine as well with Guzman, Halamalana, Cynthia, and Caitlyn. And then you have some of the best special energies in the game with Stone Energies, Strong Energy. So just a very strong package. It does what it wants to do. Avery as well. Having room for some of these interesting tech cards, notably Avery. And overall, this list is just very solid, pretty straightforward. Bunch of basics, bunch of stage 1s, not much else. I guess I should explain Terrakion. Terrakion does 50, but if all of your bench Pokemon have at least 1 damage counter on them, it does 150 more. So this is another bench damage attacker after you attack with Donphan or Steelix, both of which are very valid. And I think that's the only way you get bench damage down. But overall, it's a very, very solid list. And another one of those just good attackers with some synergy, but not too much synergy. And then a really crazy list here. This is the Fossil list, and then also it has the Hitmon package. Hitmon package, you attack with Hitmonchan, Hitmonlee, then Hitmontop, just some good attackers. But the really interesting thing here is the Fossil package. Notably this, and then you all have the Machamp, which is just so good, which you probably play in most fighting decks. It's a bit of a setup card, obviously, being a stage 2, but it's very good payoff. And then And then this one, like the Machamp, you can do 200 and then you can't attack next turn, which is a bit interesting. But all around, it's very, very solid list. Notably, you can use Armaldo, which just instantly KOs a Pokemon with 100 less HP. The Anorith is kind of weird, but this Kabutops is that the item lock one? No, that's the supporter lock one, so very solid there. You see Fossil. I've never like even played with this card. Fossil excavation map. Allowing you to search for an unidentified fossil or recover one. I've never like played with fossil decks really before, but then you have this powerful Archeops allowing you to evolution lock, which is very good, as well as this Armaldo. So you see these very solid attacking options with the Max's Hidden Ball trick. This is just a crazy list. We see the Pokemon Research Lab allowing you to set up the more fossils, and Silent Lab for disruption. So we see a mixture of disruption and then very powerful setup options, which is just a crazy list here. This is probably the craziest list. It's one of the craziest lists we're looking at, but overall, if you want to play something like spicy, probably play this. You don't need the Hitmon package. That can be tacked in or out of any list. And then we see Lightning, I believe. Okay, so there are 2 Lightning lists here. This is the very solid Raikou Amazing Rare list. Power Up Raikou, a bunch of energy types, but very simple. We see some other attackers. We see the Zapdos. We see... That's about it, right? But you're lucky, I guess. Tapu Koko's not horrible. Flaffy, Electric to power them up. Very, very basic list. Very strong, though, assuming they're not playing Bench Bear. And you can also go Turbo Zapdos. I'm personally not the biggest fan of this list. I prefer some more of like a good attacker-style Lightning deck, but this is very strong. And we also see that it has... a bunch of energy acceleration options, crazy energy count. This is like not what a GLC list you'd expect it to look like. Of course, this is very vulnerable to something like a Lost City, but, you know, don't worry about that too much, I guess, because if your Raikou goes down, your Regieleki, Tapu Koko, Zapdos aren't going to carry you. We don't even see, like, an Electros to finish off this line for a big attacker, or an Ampharos, which is just so good, but they're just choosing right. They don't even run Magnezone, so very, very risky here. We see Surge's Strategy, Hexmaniac, so some very powerful options to disrupt. This isn't anything new, but it's still a solid list. Not my favorite. I like Lightning type. I don't like this list, but what I do like, actually, is this list here. Really interesting. This goes all in on the edges, not just Zebstrika, although I'd say Zebstrika is often all you need. But you also have Electrode, and then you have Manectric, and on play draw 3, stage 1, so not bad. And then we see some really funky stuff here. So notably this, or Manectric, which I've also Electric, which has the interesting Intratrait Omega Barrier, which says prevent effects of trainer cards done to this Pokemon. So it can't be gusted up with Guzma. So this is, some of you might recognize this card when expanded from Control. So this is a Control list. Not because of this card, but you have set up Pokemon like Tapu Koko as well, but then you also see this Raichu, so you want to Evo Shock Lock them. On play, you paralyze. It's very good. Lantern, allowing you to recover 4 cards with your attack, which is just absurd. So you do Lantern. And then you recover a Devolution Spray, a Scoop Up Net. What's Devolution Spray Z versus Devolution? I didn't know these were different cards, not gonna lie. I've never played Shock Lock before. But you also have Dolls Stall and probably Robosub. Yeah, so pretty much your goal here is just going to be to recycle these cards, Lantern, be able to set up very consistently, and reuse all your Pokemon again and again and again. But also see just some interesting options. Thornton making its way into a list here. Allowing you to switch in and out of stuff. Pretty honestly straightforward. You just want to spam Raikou over and over and over. Again, if they Lost City Raichu, that's bad. You lose, because that's essentially your whole win condition. You don't even run Galar Mine in this list, so your likelihood of gusting, trapping something is very low. You do have Counter Catcher, and I imagine you have Boss. Do you not have Boss in this list? I don't know, but you have Counter Catcher, which will certainly be good enough. Allow you to gust, but that's not going to be enough to win you the game, so just keep in mind, this is a Shock Lock list, right? And you need to Gladion for the pieces. You can Peony for the pieces as well. It's a bit of a weird list, but very strong. Or pretty strong, I think. And there are actually quite a few control lists. Surprisingly, a lot of types have control. And pretty good control as well. But this is the Dragon list, the only Dragon list we're looking at. Although some lists play the Ultimate Charisma package with some like ability locking, notably Silent Lab, but it's pretty much the same idea. You want to set up your Dragon Pokemon, Gabite, Dragonite, very strong setup Pokemon, and then Dragonite, not a bad attacker. But then Garchomp, an amazing attacker, invincible the turn you play it. This is Komo-o, which does energy acceleration for 1, and then allows you to just do a very strong attack for 2. So we see some very good 2-cost attackers. So Drampa, a very solid attacker, pairs well with Team Magma's Secret Base, which is essentially the same thing as Old Cemetery, so you can check that in if you don't have Team Magma's Secret Base, because no one really has that card. But yeah, you have Drampa, very good, Drudgeon, very good, Regidraco, a solid attacker, and a very solid setup ability. And then we also see Ace Roller for healing, Malana for healing, Lance for setup. This is one of the few, another very good new card. Same thing as Winona, I believe, for Colorless, but this is Lance for Dragon. Very good. Again, not too much new. The Drudgeon providing a lot of value here. Then Garchomp, though, so pretty solid. I guess Regidraco, they're a solid chunk of new cards. Soon Heavy Ball as well, making its way very good in this list in particular. And then we see some crazy energy counts, fighting, water, grass, lightning, fire. Of course, the amazingly strong double Dragon Energy, one of the go-to attack cards, what makes this type so appealing. Of course, you can only use one of that, but then you want to set up your other attackers with the Komo-o, with Raihan here. It's a bit of a weird deck to play, but I know people who've played it very well. This has not changed much, actually, since release, except for the addition of Garchomp, very good. There's another Garchomp that people used to play, but this one's much better. And then the Komo-os are very good, Drudgeon, very good. And Dragon's honestly a very solid type. Dragonite, this Dragonite provides tons of value as well to the list. So very, very simple, but very good. And then this Dragonair actually is very interesting. For one Colorless, on stage 1, during your next turn, you may attach any number of energy cards from your hand to your Pokemon. That's pretty absurd. So you just accelerate all your energy if you get a chance to do that. Very good. Allowing you to set up lots of other things. It's a bit awkward to do, but you have Professor's Letter, Sonia, Viridian Forest Training Court to allow you to do that. So it's a solid option. I don't know if the deck usually uses it or not, but it's a nice option to have at the very least. Moving on to Fire, and I believe there are only 2 Fire lists, and this is moving on to some of the weaker lists. I guess we'll look at this list first. This is just a solid attacking list. You got Welder, you got Blacksmith, of course Raihan as well, and Magma Basin, very strong cards. And then you see this Water packaged with Volcanion, a solid attacker, the new attacker, I guess. I don't really recognize this Pokemon, to be honest. But then we also see this Entei, Heatmore, Ho-Oh, Castform, and then this Charizard, allowing you to double energy, Delphox, a very solid attacker, and engine, Magcargo as well. So you see, Fire honestly has one of the best engines as well. And it has some amazing support pieces, except it's just, like, water's so good, right? It's not great. But it's a very solid type. Its attackers are also a bit lacking, like this Braixen's kind of bad. It doesn't really do anything. So it's a solid type. Honestly, this should maybe be a different Braixen, but I'm not familiar enough with all the Braixens. But you know, it's a very solid list with just strong attacking options. Notably, Heatmore is your go-to attacker here. You can't always use that, but if you can, it's amazing. Like you do, I guess I'll show it off. 90 and a 180 snipe if you have 6 energy. So of course you have Charizard to double the fire energy paired with a Welder, a Blacksmith, or a Magma Basin plus Raihan. Powers up in 1 turn. Very solid. And this list plays the Rare Candy as well. So you can get this early-ish, but it's a bit awkward. Ho-Oh, though, providing good value. So it's Moltres here, providing good value with that Magma Basin. So the addition of Magma Basin to this list, very, very good. And making it, I think, a bit more viable. Previously, it wasn't particularly viable. And then this next list here, which is actually performing really well. It's a Fire Mill deck, which is pretty crazy. You again focus on this Charizard. I guess I should show it off. Doubling the fire energy attached to all your Pokemon. And some amazing art here. And then you have the Delphox to draw, Emboar to accelerate energy, which looks pretty normal. But then you look at and then you also have Magcargo, but then you look at the attackers. And these are kind of weird. Centiskorch here, allowing you to mill a card for each fire energy attached to this Pokemon. Or Moltres, essentially doing the same thing, except you have to discard them. And Yeah, this is pretty absurd. You just like discard lots of cards from your opponent's deck. Urkryo here, Gust, Confuses, and Burns. Very solid, allowing you to just control them a little. And then Heatmore here, allowing you to recover up to 2 cards based on coin flips. This is very good, allowing you to have all these interesting options. Pretty funky here, but it's a very good. And just doubling the energy, it's kind of weird, but it's a very solid list. You don't see Welder or Blacksmith coming in because you can afford to take slower turns. No Steven's Resolve, but still pretty solid. We see Wally here as well. Silene, Lieutenant Surge, pretty solid control cards. Greens as well, interesting for setup. Very solid in decks that don't play basics with abilities. So that's very good. And then you have the Rare Candy, and able to access that easier with greens as well as the Peony, making that more consistent. So some interesting additions to that deck. And this list is just weird, but surprisingly very good. People are thinking this was just a joke deck, but now it's very strong. So this is one of the big meta shifts, I'd say. A lot more like control style lists, and this Fire deck is very solid and very much a valid deck. And then we have a few metal lists here. Pretty similar idea. You could argue which Bronzong's better. These two are actually very similar. I'm not sure if I should have necessarily showed them both. This one has Aegislash, allowing for tanking. Yeah, this first list here. Also, it has Metagross with this ability, Emergency Entry. Which during your turn, if you do this at like the start of your turn, you can just stick it onto your bench and draw 3. That's pretty good. Meteor Mash 100, 200 next turn, not bad. And then we see this was playing the Copperajah, a very good attacker. Cling Clang, allowing you to accelerate a bunch of energy as well. And then a bunch of defensive stuff, Metal Frying Pan, Metal Goggles, Crystal Cave. We even see Max Potion. We see no Mallow and Lana, but we do see Cheryl. You'll see the Mallow to set up the Metagross. A bit of an interesting play. I'd argue that's not strong enough, but it's apparently working, so that's pretty cool. But all in all, this is just like a really solid list and a pretty interesting one. We see Disruption with Faba. We see, I mean, that's not that much disruption, but a little bit of a controlling aspect. Overall, just a very solid. And that's not the more I was looking for Hex Maniac, expecting that to be in the list, but that of course turns off quite a few abilities. Bronzong, also very important, allowing you to move off the damage, and the Copperajah to heal, or something like that. You can use Max Potion as well, and Scoop Up Nest. Scoop Up Nest played in almost every list. So Metal Saucer, allowing you to accelerate energy. So very solid, consistent list with some spicy options like Metagross. Dialga also allowing you to recover, and a very solid attacker. Overall, this is a very tanky list, a very strong list that can compete, although obviously Metal is one of the less played types. It plays pretty similarly to a lot of the other lists, but still solid. And then this last Metal list here, this is a pretty similar idea with Clink Clang, Bronzong, Copperajah, Dialga, but then you have some interesting options. The new Zamazenta, very good here, allowing you to do 220 if one of your Pokemon is knocked out last turn. Otherwise, just 100 for 3, not great. But you take 30 less damage, paired with, of course, stuff like Metal Goggles, Metal Frying Pan, Cape. No healing Stadium, no Crystal Cave. Do see Metal Core Barrier here, though. So a bit of an interesting change-up. And then Cobalion, really nice, allowing you to hit 30 plus 30 for each prize card they've taken. And also immune to basics next turn if you use Quick Guard. So solid Pokemon that. Jirachi, and then Heatran, which does more damage for fire energy, so we see this fire package. And there's some other ways of playing Metal, but this is like the other main way, I'd say. Also, we see Adamant making its way into this list, allowing you to search for 2 cards if you discard 2 Metal Energy from your hand. Arguably a bit bold, but very doable with Mount Coronet, allowing you to just fulfill the supporter cost immediately. So overall, the list is pretty straightforward, very similar to the other one, but I think a bit interesting with some unique twists. Debatably, I shouldn't have showed this, but I thought it was worth showing. And then last and probably least, there's Fairy. There's a Fairy control list as well, but this is the one that's a bit better. We just see Clefable, which is honestly not bad, allowing you to essentially do 160 for 1, really good. Whimsicott, allowing you to search for anything, pretty good. And then Shiinotic, allowing you to set up, but good, right? We see good cards. And Matisse, allowing you to move energy. And this Togekiss is not that good, right? It's not horrible, but it's just underwhelming. Mimikyu, not the best. Mr. Mime, nice, like, bench protection. Genius, pretty alright. We also see good cards like Mina. We see, I feel like Diantha is pretty good here as well. Should probably be played in this list. I haven't played Diantha, but I believe it's a good card. And we also see the Air as well and Gloria making their way into this list for good consistency. But overall, this list just falls short. Fairy's been quite neglected for a while, unfortunately. Surprisingly, it's not doing too badly. Like, this list doesn't look horrible, but it just lacks a little bit to keep up. Having to run thinner amounts of Pokemon. We see just like 5 or 6 lines here, maybe a little more, but only a few lines, so not quite capable of keeping up with the format. Net, though, providing solid value with issues. The attackers all have lowish HP, the highest being Togekiss with 140, which most decks can find a way to one-shot, but Fairy's an interesting type. Clefairy Stall, Fairy Stall with Clefairy Doll is... I was looking at that list, and it just wasn't good enough. I was hoping it would be good enough, but it's not. But overall, I think this deck's just pretty cool. And I think the format's pretty solid. It hasn't changed much, unfortunately, which is one of the big issues. There are a number of issues with GLC. This is one of the biggest, but I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're enjoying GLC and watching me catch up with the format. And comment down below if you want to see a tournament with there's people. If you're interested in being in that tournament as well, I'd be interested in hearing that. But I hope you enjoyed. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.